The next Doctor Who should be non-binary, in other words, someone who is neither male nor female. The idea has been floated by the actor who plays the current Doctor Who's sidekick. Comes a week after Superman came out as bisexual. Is there an audience? Is there an audience demand for this, or are the creative industries using their influence to turn previously popular programmes into what amount to sociology lectures? Let's turn to the host of Free Speech Nation, Andrew Doyle, again. Andrew, welcome to you. I was looking at Doctor Who's recent figures over the last 5 years. They're half of what they were in its most recent heyday. That doesn't necessarily, prove this modern dictum, go woke, go broke, but it's not encouraging either for the producers.
I think it would probably suggest that these kind of shoehorning in of social justice ideas into the plot lines, there's been an emphasis more on diversity, both racial but also LGBT diversity in the plot lines. You've had... there was even a man giving birth in one episode, albeit that was an alien. So there's been a lot of this kind of stuff thrown in. Whether that correlates to the declining figures, I don't know. But you're absolutely right, because actually the current ratings for Doctor Who is pretty much equivalent of when it was axed back in 1989. So this is going to give them some pause for thought. But the reason why there might be a correlation is not that Doctor Who fans are bothered by seeing a range of different types of people on screen. Quite the opposite. I mean, sci-fi fans have always been really open and tolerant of all different types. A lot of them are the nerds in society, the outsiders. So they absolutely have never had this problem. If there is a correlation, it's probably due to the fact that people don't like being lectured. People don't like watching their favourite programme and having this sense.
Andrew, sententious, that's today's word, isn't it? It's just sententious.
Exactly. And that, I think, is what offends people. That is what puts people off. Because, if you're a tolerant, open person who doesn't care about these sorts of things, and you watch this program and you can sense the executives sort of wagging their finger at you saying, oh, you're probably a bit of an evil homophobe and you need to see a gay person on Doctor Who. And, that's what puts people off. It's not that you can't have these characters. And as for the non-binary thing, I don't know. I mean, Doctor Who's an alien, right? I mean, Doctor Who's half human, I think.
You are revealing yourself to be slightly nerdy there, Andrew. I didn't have you down as a Doctor Who.
Well, I used to watch it as a child and I stopped because it was too frightening. And actually, that's what's quite interesting about Doctor Who. It's meant to be a scary show for kids. And I think just putting all this stuff in, it's just a bit boring, actually.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. My kids still gone about was it the Weeping Angels or something? They're still gone about.
Yeah,
they were utterly.
I actually saw that one. That's one of the new ones I did see, which is actually quite scary.
We're going to park it. We're going to move on to what I think, and I think you'll probably agree, is a more important story in this canon. And it's about Halloween, sort of, with Halloween approaching. The National Theatre of Scotland is urging the dropping of the word spooky because of its alleged racist connotations. The theatre is avoiding the word, which it used to promote a production of A Christmas Carol 5 years ago, because it says it's recently become aware of the fact it has been used in the past as a racial slur by Americans. The word has been used for centuries in Britain as an alternative description for a ghost, but in World War II, apparently it was used by American pilots that's white American pilots, to belittle their black fellow airmen. The National Theatre said that if even one person was offended by the word, that warranted its exclusion. There's quite a bit there, Andrew, I think. That final point about, well, if only one person's offended, then everybody else will have to do without it. I mean, that's an interesting point about representation, minority rights, etc. And then there's the etymology thing, that here's a word that for literally hundreds of years was in use, and because of something that happened 60 years ago, didn't even happen in this country, not even in this continent, well, it's verboten.
You would have thought that a theatre would be familiar with the multiplicity of language and the way in which words can mean different things, and the idea that people would automatically assume that it might have racist connotations, because of course it doesn't. The word spooky clearly relates to the idea of something that's a bit chilling, a bit frightening. And what's interesting about what you just say, though, about if one person is offended, well, in this case, no one was offended. There was actually a spokesperson from the theatre said no one has complained, but they were worried that someone might complain in the future. This is particularly interesting because the word spook, which we all know to mean ghostly and sinister, this is the main plot line of Philip Roth's novel, The Human Stain, where a college professor uses the word spook to describe a student who's absent and then is fired because that student happened to be African-American, and it's seen as a racist connotation. So this has been, and that was back in 2000, he wrote that book. So this is just, life imitating art, I suppose, but absolutely ridiculous to assume that people don't understand that when you say spooky in relation to Halloween, you're not being racist. You're describing ghosts and goblins and banshees and whatever else you want to do.
And, you know, it just doesn't even feel remotely. I mean, sometimes there are some words and you can scratch your head and you think, well, that's a bit problematic. I mean, this is Halloween, this is kids, this is cuddly, this is fun, this is... And people are attached to it.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way that anyone in their right mind would have an issue with this. If someone seriously were to go to the theatre and say, well, you've described that pumpkin head as spooky and I find that racially insensitive, you know, the correct response to that is, OK, well, on you go. That's your issue to deal with because no one else does. But of course, the theatre doesn't do that. The theatre not only makes this rule, but it's just imagined the possibility that someone might draw this connection. So no, again, this is one of the sillier culture war stories of late, but it is indicative of a broader trend, this broader idea that we must sanitize language, we must eliminate the possibility of offence.
It's Scotland.
It's Scotland, so what do you expect?